If I don't know what your needs are, your desires are, or exactly what the problem is, and the problem often is not the thing that someone comes to me and says that they have. I'll give you an example of that in a moment. I'm not qualified to give you advice until I know exactly what the situation is. And the only way I know what the situation is I have to ask a bunch of questions. Any of you have ever watched a police show or a detective show or one of those shows where the cops are interrogating somebody? They have them in a little room sitting at the table and they're talking to them. Or any of you ever actually been accosted by a police officer in question? What do the cops do? The cops don't just start telling you stuff. They don't tell you anything. What do the cops do? They just ask you a whole bunch of questions. They just keep asking you questions. Question after question after question after question after question. Why? Because they're trying to gather information. Now, to be clear, you should not speak to a police officer. A police officer starts asking you questions. Don't answer any questions. Let them know, hey, officer, I am invoking my Fifth Amendment privilege to not say anything. I have a right to remain silent. So if I'm under arrest, arrest me. If I'm not under arrest, then I'm going to be on my way, officer. Thank you. You should not start answering questions of a police officer without the presence of a lawyer, because a cop will manipulate you into something that you probably don't want to get into. But the point is, I want you to get the bigger point, that cops do this very thing because that's their very job, is to gather information. And you cannot gather information while speaking. You gather information while listening. So you have to ask questions. I'm saying that to say, and actually, before I get to that, let me give you the example that I told you I would give. Back in the day when I used to make basketball content, I would get a lot of athletes coming to me, and they would come to me asking for help. They would say, well, can you help me with my game? Can you help me with this? Can you help me make the team, et cetera, et cetera? And there would be this like blanket question like that of a person who I never met and I don't even know. And the first thing I would do is get more information. If I was going to engage them, the first thing I would do is ask them a bunch of questions. Well, who are you? Where do you play? What level are you at? How often do you practice? What happened the last time you tried to do that thing and you failed? What do you think you need to work on? I would ask all those questions. Once I got all that information, the answer would be really obvious. Almost so obvious to the point that the person can answer their own question without me giving them any information. A good salesperson is really good at doing this. That's what a good salesperson does. That's what a good consultant does. That's what a good lawyer does. That's what a good therapist does. They ask a bunch of questions. They let you do all the talking, and you actually end up, quote unquote, solving your own problem. You didn't really solve your own problem because you didn't know the quality of question to ask, because you couldn't ask yourself the same question that your therapist or your coach could have asked. So they helped you, but all they did was use what we call the Socratic method, which is ask a bunch of questions. If you ask enough questions, then people often come to their own conclusions. The value that you bring to the table is that you're providing the questions.